Well, good evening and thanks for joining us here on News 20 on GTN. I'm Randy Gardner, our second edition of the St. Louis County Park Show. And joining me to my right, we have J.D. Magarani. Glad you could join us here on the show.
Pleased to be here.
Last saw you at the Eagle Days. A wonderful day this year to watch Eagles.
Oh, we had quite a bit of people there as well as the Eagles. And it's always good to see the Eagles in nature rather than just in a set context.
So many high-profile things that the St. Louis County Parks do, and you're the manager of the St. Louis County Parks. Wanted to have you here on this second show to talk a little bit about the activity guide. It comes out twice a year, and it is filled with activities. We could spend the next 3 days going through all the things here, but with the transition from winter into spring now, wanted to talk about some of the things that are out there for families to do here in the St. Louis County area.
Right, with over 70 parks in our system, over 12,000 acres of land. We're like one of the second largest county park systems within the nation. So we have well over 400 programs every year. And those don't include the programs that are brought forth by individuals simply renting the parks for their own special events, fun walks, medical walks, things like that. The activity guide comes out twice a year, again, at the end of August for the fall-winter guide, and then the spring-summer guide, which comes out in March. It'll have all the different programs through August. It begins a discussion of our recreation complexes. It'll talk about the summer camps that we have, and the summer camps are really important now because even though they don't start till June and they run through August, mothers and families have to sign up now to get into the camp that they're interested in getting into.
When you look at the activity guide here, it comes out twice a year. You designed this thing and put this thing together. A lot of work for yourself, huh?
Yes, it is.
But definitely worth it. When you look at it, it's first quality. What's some of the feedback you receive about this manual?
The two different parts. I mean, there's a sector of the population that wants everything online, everything internet. I mean, it's important to them to pick up their smartphone and be able to find the information that way, which you can do. We take a PDF of this and we put it on our webpage, which is at stlouisco.com/parks. But those who subscribe to the St. Louis Post-Dispatch, we produce this in cooperation with them. We give them the images, we give them the script, we have all of our programmers, well over 30, send the information to me, and then we go over how it's going to appear, what it's going to be presented like. This year's edition was worked on with the Suburban Journal staff. Chris Oth was one of the individuals who helped work on the design, the cover design for it, so I'm very proud of this particular issue. It has everything about all the different county parks, not just the rec complexes, but all of our cultural sites, Faust Park, Jefferson Barracks, Lallmeyer Park, the Museum of Transportation, etc. So there's so many different parks that are located so close to everybody throughout the county. You're going to find something that's going to suit your taste and your needs.
If someone missed the first show that we talked to Tom Ott about all the county parks as a whole, kind of take a step back for us. If you can talk about how many county parks there are, kind of refresh us on how many acres, and it's amazing how many millions of people come through the park on a yearly basis.
Right. We have about 44 that are listed in the guide with specific programs. We have well over 70 parks within the system. There's about 12,000 acres, I think like 12,800 and such. The largest park is Creve Coeur Park. It's also the oldest. A lot of different events there. It's very popular for these fun walks and runs. There's a lot of boating programs out there. One of the features in the activity guide that's lined out is a lot of the canoe and kayaking programs that we have. There's also the ability to rent bicycles and such out for the Creve Coeur Trail, which is a very popular trail experience to have. And of course, it's going to have some interesting improvements coming up in the near future.
I think a lot of people don't realize that some of the parks that they frequent are actually St. Louis County parks. Like, I didn't know up until a few years ago that Creve Coeur was part of the county program, and I've been dealing with county for 18, 20 years now.
Well, and it's got a long history. I mean, the swimming events for the Olympics when it was in St. Louis was held out at Creve Coeur Park. So there's just a lot of experience throughout the park that goes down with the history of St. Louis in general. Jefferson Barracks, Fort Bellefontaine, Bissell House, Museum of Transportation with the tunnel they have out there. A lot of significant historic sites here in the county.
I'll ask you a question. How do you keep all this information disseminated correctly, because there's so many parks and so many different things to do?
Well, I have a lot of good programmers, a lot of different park supervisors that will constantly update you and let you know what's happening, where it's happening, when the things are going. And a lot of the individuals who work for parks were real change agents. I mean, they look at what's coming in trends throughout the nation. They really want to be on the leading edge, the cutting edge of recreational and historical experiences throughout the area.
And that's one thing I talked to Tom about, with lifestyles of individuals changing these days with families and the economy changing. Everybody's looking for fun, free type things to do. And St. Louis County Parks offers so many things.
Well, there's a lot of programs that we offer, and we try to cater to the needs of our growing demographic as well. There's in the This and That section in the activity guide, you'll see programs specifically designed for children, programs where everyone, entire families can come. And they also have a section just for adults. And new this year within the adult section are specially designed programs for singles only, so that they can get out and enjoy the experiences of park. We don't want to be sedentary in today's society. You have to get out and move, and so many of us are in offices and doing work that way that gives an opportunity for you to get out there and meet others and enjoy yourselves.
And St. Louis County, no matter whether it's the police department or the park system, always proactive in their approach to the community. You mentioned before about a lot of the park directors stepping up to the plate and bringing out some of these ideas. What about contributions from the community, if they have one?
Well, we kind of had people vote with their feet this year with a lot of our food truck experiences. This year's programs will be sponsored by Feast Magazine. It's on the very back of the guide as well. There's an ad in there. These events are held at Lamar, Faust Park, Tillis Park, and Creve Coeur. Large amount of food trucks are out there. We have music on a bandwagon. It's just a good way to meet and greet people in the area.
If you had to maybe pick out one favorite, not to put you on the spot here, but you know, something that you're attached to emotionally, what would you say?
Well, I'd have to say World War II weekend. I'm a cultural site manager down at Jefferson Barracks, Bissell House up north, and Fort Bell Fountain. And the World War II weekend is the longest running continuous World War II reenactment in the nation. It's been going well over 30 some odd years. Usually have in excess of 10,000 people attending. Associated with it is a canteen dance, so you can go there for, I think it's $20 at the door, $15 in advance. You can hear big band swing music, enjoy dinner, and see a lot of period reenactors in 1940s clothing, and it's just music everyone loves.
And you can of course find that in the Parks Guide, but is that around the corner here?
Yes, it's coming up at the end of April, April 26th through 28th. Canteen dance is on the 27th.
When you look at an activity like this and brings out 10,000 people to a county park, does that even amaze you sometimes?
Well, 425 acres swallows 10,000 pretty quickly. That same park has the JB Blast, which will be July 5th this year, and it's a large concert program, and it swallows everybody just in that historic section. But yeah, it does amaze you. The passive parks like Lone Elk, where you can go out and experience the newborn bison that was born off-season in December, and the elk. There's just so many different personal experiences you can have in a St. Louis County park that you're not going to find that in any other place.
The one thing that we frequent every year, of course, is at Fort Bellefontaine is the eagle watching. That's extremely popular and a really cool event.
Yeah, Fort Bellefontaine has one of these singular characters about it. It's got a 3-mile loop trail, beautiful WPA ruins, and it's one of the first American forts west of Mississippi. So it has the eagle watch in the winter and the upland prairie walk in the spring.
When you look around the St. Louis County parks, there's small ones, there's big ones. In the news lately, it had the talks about the Go Ape event. Can you kind of tell us where that stands and when people can start experiencing that?
Yes, it was approved by County Council on February 19th, so it will be installed in Creve Coeur Park. We involve the public in any of the new changes that we have in park. We want feedback from the public on where they want to recreate and what the improvements they want to see. As you weigh all the different factors, it seems to be a really good fit in Creve Coeur. It should be in place sometime late spring.
What about fishing for the family? Always a great activity. Do all the parks offer that have some kind of water feature?
Most of them, yes, with a water feature, some sort of a lake feature. There's quite a few, Creve Coeur, Spanish Lake, Simpson, where there's a lot of different fishing programs. There are fishing programs geared towards scouts and young children, for entire families. There's several fishing derbies. There's also educational programs which are usually featured at Queenie Park in the off-season, February, March and such, where you can learn about fly fishing and other things. Tillis Park has fly fishing classes.
Do you have to adhere to the Missouri Conservation rules and regulations when you come to a county park as far as fishing licenses and things like that?
Correct, yes.
I want to make sure nobody just shows up and starts throwing.
You need your limits. We do everything according to all the different regulations of the state and the county.
When you take and break some of these parks down, are they 24 hours a day, 7 days a week? Do they have open times and closed times? And what about like open times and closed times throughout the year?
Right. Typically, you can follow the general rule of thumb of sunrise to sunset. There are some special programs, and those will be after hours. We have an adult Easter egg hunt that'll be coming up at Jefferson Barracks, which is in the evening. And there's a special program where you can get passes to walk in Creve Coeur Park along the trail in the evening. There's some canoe paddles in Creve Coeur Park as well that are moonlight paddles, and those are really fun. Different night programs where you bring flashlights to look at the flora and fauna and how it exists in our Missouri woodlands and upland prairies that are found throughout the area.
JD, we could sit and talk about this book and all the activities for hours and hours on end, but the best place to go, where can they pick one of these up if they did not get one in the mail?
March 3rd, the Post sends it out with the subscription. You can stop at any of our complexes or cultural sites or the Clayton office. We have them there. Go to the webpage. You'll see it listed there. Use your smartphone or your laptop, and you'll find us there.
What about volunteers? We talked to Tom a little bit about that. With you being over the St. Louis County Parks as the manager, what would you say to people about coming out, donating time, and being part of the experience?
It's a really good way to give back to the community, especially if you walk over 140 miles of trails. We have a trail watch program where you wear a vest and you have a cell phone that's given, and you just report anything that you see is occurring along the trail. It could be a law enforcement issue that you want to be concerned about, maybe a maintenance issue. But if you're out there walking anyway, that's a wonderful opportunity. We have a lot of gardening programs for volunteers, honeysuckle removal, which removes invasive honeysuckle. Our museums, we're always looking for museum guides who can volunteer time to sit with us and share their knowledge of history or art with the visitors.
And as I talked to Tom, he said that you are going to be a staple here on this show over the next year. So you'll frequent this desk. We'll be out in the community a lot shooting things on site so you can see some of the things we talk about here. But as we wrap this segment up, JD, what do you see for the future of the St. Louis County Parks? Such a rich tradition and growth, and with people and the way the world is now looking to be outside and experience family events. What do you see for the future?
Well, parks don't exist in a vacuum, and people vote with their feet. And the more people come to the parks and they enjoy it, they share their experiences with others. When you help participate in programs, you're helping bring in revenue to the park system to keep it sustainable. And if we ever ask for need or help, hopefully you'll be there to support us.
And the one thing we touched on at the beginning of the show and last week, a number that's staggering. A lot of people might go out to the park, they might see 10 people, they might see 1,000 people. It's amazing how many people come out and are part of the process, basically. And you're the manager. What's it make you feel like when you lay your head down at night to know that that many people are pleased throughout St. Louis County to come to something that's under your hand?
Well, it's certainly daunting, and always looking forward to doing more the next day.
Sounds good. JD Magaranti, thank you so much for your time. You'll be here quite often here at the desk, and we'll be out in the community with JD in the future. Stay with us. Much more next here on News 20 on GTN.
I remember the moment.
I'll never forget that moment.
That moment?
It was a moment that changed my life. I'd been training with my team for months, and now we had been called up for the first time. The real deal. Wildfires were getting dangerously close to homes. At that moment, I got my first taste of just how important the Guard is to my community.
See how the Guard can be an important part of your life at NationalGuard.com.
And welcome back to News 20 on GTN. I'm Randy Gardner. Joining us now, we have Esley Hamilton, the County Preservation Historian. Glad you could join us here on the show. We appreciate your time.
I'm glad to be here.
This is going to be a fascinating segment coming off the talking with JD about the county parks and how many people visit the parks. You're the historian of this. A great book here.
Yeah, let me show you.
Have brought with you. It's awesome. The pictures on the front is great, and it's filled with pictures. Tell us a little bit about the book.
Well, first of all, this copy is for you.
Well, thank you very much. Well, now I'll be able to shoot some footage of it and put it on the show. Thank you.
Good, good. This book includes city parks and county parks. It was actually the proposal of the publishers, Reedy Press, and Nene Harris, who is a friend of mine and a very distinguished local historian, did the city part of it, and I did the county part. And she had her own photographer, and we had a county ranger, Steve Tiemann, who has been carrying his camera with him for 20 years probably, turned out to have some really fabulous pictures, and so he did all the pictures for the county part of the book.
Esley, when you look at putting together a book like this, where do you even start?
Well, I was lucky because we have been trying to keep a record of the history of our parks since the beginning of our department, which is back in 1950. And Nene, on the other hand, had to go to the library and read every annual report for every year since 1836, I think. So, but we do have 70 parks, and they, even though our park history is shorter, since we were only created as part of the new county charter in 1950, we do have a lot to talk about.
When someone from the parks or county in general has a question, are you the man they come to then?
Yeah, that I am, and actually they send people to me from other departments and even from other agencies around the metropolitan area, including the History Museum.
Is this something, when you look at this, I mean, a lot of people do successful things in their lives and as a job, and they really can't put a finger on it. This you can literally look at and feel every day. Does it make you proud to have done this?
It really does, and I think especially because the publishers did such a great job in the way it looks. The pictures are just great, and they did a great job also of putting the most text where the history was the most interesting and most complicated, and so it's all kind of scaled in that direction also.
For someone who has not seen the book yet, how would you explain this book to them? What can they get out of this?
Well, we are trying to highlight some of the most interesting parks, and it doesn't include all 70, but we have most of the really interesting ones featured, and it shows you the way the park looks now with the wonderful photographs, but also we're telling you the history of the park, what it was originally, how it came to the public, and events that might have occurred since that time. And of course that is very varied because we've had gifts of land from philanthropists, but the biggest donor was the voter. We had 6 bond issues in a row that the voters of St. Louis County approved to allow us to create this park system.
I think people realize that when you have strong parks within your community that families and individuals can go to and partake in, just makes the community a better place. Would you agree with that?
Oh yeah, I heard an interesting piece on NPR just recently about the towns in North Dakota that are booming now, and they interviewed a guy who said he didn't want to bring his family there because it didn't have really what they needed to live, and they said, like what? And he said, parks. That was the first thing he said.
As you look through this book, everybody has an emotional attachment to something that they do. Is there anything specific in here that, if I said, show me one page out of here, that really touches your heart, where would you direct me to?
Well, I'm of course interested in history, and I think one of the strengths of our park system is that we have quite a few interesting historic buildings as part of our park system, and that ranges from houses that go back to the early 1800s, like Thornhill House at Faust Park and the Daniel Bissell House. Those were both built before 1820. And we go right on up to the 1950s on our Frank Lloyd Wright House in Ebsworth Park. I believe we're the only county park system in the entire country that has a Frank Lloyd Wright House as part of the park system.
What do you see as you look back at the history of this? We talked to JD, a little bit about the future, but what do you as the historian see for the future of the county parks?
Well, I think we've been in a holding position for a long time and really working with less money than we ideally should have to give people a first-class experience. But I think that may change, particularly if the tax issue that's coming up in April passes. And the controversy over the parks over the last 2 years has been actually very gratifying for our county parks employees, because the public has really come out in force to say how much they like the parks, and we're very appreciative of that.
The pictures in here, of course, people love to see pictures. Fascinating, done. I'm looking at the one right now of the lights at Tillis Park. Unbelievable.
Yeah. 27 years we've been doing Winter Wonderland, and we've raised hundreds of thousands of dollars for charity with this. So we're very proud of this too, and it keeps getting better every year that they can refine the light display. And this year the big thing was having a night where people could walk through. And thousands of people came to that, and I think that's going to be more and more popular as the years go on.
Leslie, when was this book actually published?
It was published last May.
So it's very up to date. That was going to be
Right.
my questions. With things continually changing and new things being built within the parks, how often will you have to keep this book updated? Will there be slide-in pages?
Yeah, I don't know. Well, we are working on two important projects right now at Faust Park. We're bringing the Spanish Lake Blacksmith Shop from Spanish Lake. It was built in 1880, and it never had a floor. It's the posts go right into the ground, and that will match up with the blacksmith collections that we already have at that park. And we're then also bringing a general store from Fenton, which I would have liked to have seen stay in its original position, but that wasn't an option for us. And so we'll be able to have an actual store where, who knows, we might be able to sell the crafts that are being made by the craftsmen in the village.
What's been some of the feedback that you've received from not only the community, but people within St. Louis County that have been there for many years?
Well, one of the things is people don't realize how many parks we have and how widely spread they are. St. Louis County people tend to move in one direction, the direction that where their parents came from. They move west, north, or south, but if they are from the south, they never go north, and vice versa. So Fort Bellefontaine that JD mentioned in the far north is one of our least known parks, and in the far south we have a beautiful park called Bee Tree Park, which overlooks the Mississippi River and has a 1929 mansion in it, and very few people seem to know about that.
As we go through this series over the next year or so, we're going to spotlight individual parks and some of the things they feature. As you mentioned, I think a lot of people, they might hear the name of the park, but they don't really understand all the cool things there are at these parks. Is that some of the things that you hear people say when they read this?
Right. And I think people don't realize that some of these parks have a long history before the Parks Department bought them. For example, Spanish Lake was known as a resort in the 18th century, before the Louisiana Purchase. And the same thing is true of Creve Coeur Park. And at Cliff Cave Park, there was a cave that was used as a wine garden in the 1860s. And there was a train line that made a special stop there for people from St. Louis.
When you look at the parks, as you're mentioning, with this rich tradition and history, are the parks kept, I'm not sure how to put this, but do you try to keep the parks as much as you can connected to their history? Oh,
yes, and I have to say that our operations people are very conscientious about maintaining the historic buildings within the parks. You wouldn't believe how much money it takes just to keep a building standing, looking the way it always has. But also, I think that we try to, as you mentioned earlier, give our county parks a certain identity through our graphic design, and also having the same colors used on the buildings throughout. There are over 40 municipalities in St. Louis County that have their own city park systems. So in addition to the conservation department and the state park system, I can see why people get confused about whose park is whose.
And when we talked before the show, we talked about you being the county preservation historian, but you also mentioned that you're the historian of all the muni parks too. There's a lot of those.
Well, I don't know them all, but I work with many mayors and many local historical societies. In fact, we have an association, an informal association that meets twice a year of all the local historical societies, and the mailing list is over 40, I think.
How important is it for, especially for younger people today, to keep that historical perspective of what's going on in the world, where they came from, where the parks, the land, all that stuff in perspective as we move into the future?
Well, I think it's very important, and in particular in St. Louis, which tends to have an attitude that we're not as good as some other places. It's important to realize how many great things we have and how they were created by foresighted people in the past. And we're going to have to use that same kind of foresight to convey these things to our generations in the future.
Now, Esley, we talked about the book here, the St. Louis County Parks book. Where can somebody pick one of these up at?
They're available in all bookstores. One good place would be the History Museum store, which is called the Louisiana Purchase. That's one of my favorite names for a store. And it's also available in the shops in the parks, including Jefferson Barracks and I believe at Faust Park.
And we touched on it earlier as you look through this book, fabulous pictures, a wealth of knowledge. Tell us once again what it makes you feel like to have your name on the front of that book.
Well, I have a friend who used to send me an email about every 6 months and ask me when I was starting on the book. So now I have a book to show, so I'm very proud of that.
And how did this come about? Was it something that you brought up, or was it brought to you?
It was brought to me by Reedy Press. Josh Stevens was the main person there. It's a small press with just 2 full-time employees, but they're really doing a terrific job of publishing local authors. For example, a lot of the great writers who used to be with the Post-Dispatch have written for them. They have a whole line of books about sports history in St. Louis that are outstanding. And they're covering a real need in the community that no other publisher is covering.
How do you keep this book up to date? We talked about that before. When you look at the next 10 years or so, do you look at maybe writing another book? And
well, we have another book that we published in 1996 called The Past and Our Presents, Historic Buildings in St. Louis County. And we sold the last copies of that just a few months ago. So that has to be my first priority because that's much more out of date than this one. And, but I think that it is something that will sell forever because it's a great subject.
And Esley, as we wrap this show up here today, if you could put everything that you've learned, all your history, all the future, into 1 or 2 quick sentences for everybody out there about visiting one of the parks, and not just visiting, but be part of the park system, what would you want them to know?
Wow. Well, I want them to come out to the bush honeysuckle clearing thing because that is the biggest environmental issue in this region. Bush honeysuckle is taking over the eastern Missouri environment, and we've got to get rid of it.
Well, Esley, we appreciate your time. We could talk to you again, just like JD, for hours about everything you've done. I can't wait to sit down and look and read this book fully. We'll have some pictures up on the website. So we appreciate your time. Of course, as always, it's Esley Hamilton, Preservation Historian for St. Louis County. We'd like to thank you for joining us tonight here on News 20 on GTN. You can go to stlouisco.com for more information /parks. We'll have everything up on the screen for you for more information on everything we talked about here on the show. So I hope you enjoyed it. We'll see you tomorrow night right here on News 20 on GTN.
I remember the moment.
I'll never forget that moment.
That moment?
It was a moment that changed my life. I'd been training with my team for months, And now, we had been called up for the first time. The real deal. Wildfires were getting dangerously close to homes. At that moment, I got my first taste of just how important the Guard is to my community.
See how the Guard can be an important part of your life at NationalGuard.com.
Be out there. Be out there. Be out there.
Be out there.
Time was, kids did what came naturally. Spending free time running barefoot through the grass, wading knee-deep in streams, climbing to the tallest branch. But today, American kids are more likely found texting, watching TV, or gazing at a computer screen. They spend more than 7 hours in front of electronic media. Something essential has been lost. Childhood's connection to the natural world. That's why National Wildlife Federation created the Be Out There movement. Kids move indoors causes a host of problems, from obesity to ADHD. But outdoor play can go a long way to improving kids' health, body, mind, and spirit. It helps them stay fit, enhances creativity and attention spans, and could even make them better students. Do your part. Be a part of Be Out There.